there makers, it is time for another Fabric Masterclass, and today we are looking at fleece. I'm Jo from Minerva and I'm going to be taking you through some different types of fleece and how to sew it. I'm wearing a Page hoodie fleece. I won't have it on for long, I'm absolutely roasting hot, but I just wanted to show you some of the things that work really well with fleece. So hoodies, sweatshirts, sweatpants, loungewear, all of those kinds of things make really good garments with fleece. The whole of this Fabric Masterclass series is linked to our Minerva fabric guide. It's a comprehensive guide to different types of fabric base cloths. So featured in here are 70 of our most popular cloths. The first chapter is all about how fabrics are made, lots of other background information about fabric too. It's a great page here on weight versus thickness, which you'll find particularly useful with fleece. There's a section on fibre type, so you might need to be knowing what fibre your fleece is made up in so that you can work out what properties it will have. And in the final section there's a double page spread for each fabric type, and there's a fabric swatch. Let's have a closer look at the fleece page. Fleece has a difficulty rating of 4 out of 5 in our guide, and that's because the fabric is very thick and you can quickly build up bulky layers, and you'll also be working with the nap of the fabric. Fleece is a light fabric, but it is thick, so you'll be thinking about wearing it for warmer garments. You can get fleece in different textures, in solid colours and in prints. You'll need an 80 plus needle because it's a thicker fabric, and I'm going to show you some sewing tips for working with fleece today. And there's a piece of polar fleece as the sample. If you feel that, you can then compare the weight to other fabrics on our website. Fleece is closely related to our fur fabrics. So here a Balboa fur has a plushy pile, so you can see if maybe you would like to switch out your fleece choice for a fur fabric. I've cooled down now to a Eleanor shirt in chambray because I just can't wear fleece in here, it's too hot. But I'm going to show you some fleeces, and I'm going to show you some of the properties that different fleeces have. Fleece is mostly a synthetic fabric, so if you check out the fabric description it'll probably be polyester, but we do have a couple of natural cotton fleeces which have a slightly different texture on the right side and the wrong side. I'll show you a couple of those in the gallery. You can get patterned ones, you can get smooth plain ones in different weights, and also you'll find that fleece is closely linked to our fur category, so you'll get textured ones like this. So this one is a Sherpa. You get a lambskin one that's really soft and fluffy, and you can also get a teddy bear fur one, and you'll see both of those listed in both the fur category and the fleece category. In terms of characteristics, fleece will wick away moisture, so it's used maybe as the lining of a coat. So if you've got a different fabric on the outside like cord or denim, you might line the inside with a micro fleece, which is a fine fleece. You can get a thicker fleece, so you can make a whole coat with this one. It's got a fuzzy texture on both sides. One side is slightly different to the other, so the wrong side looks like felt, and the right side has a slight pile, which means that when you're cutting it, you treat it like a fabric that has a nap. So you'll feel which way feels smoother, and you can feel which way feels a little bit rougher. You need your fabric to be going smooth from neck to hem. Lots of fleeces have this smooth texture, just looks quite felted, or you can look out in our core range for minky fleeces or plush fleeces, which might be used for toy making or for making blankets and homeware or kids and baby wear. You can also get a dimple fleece, so this one has a little surface texture. It's really beautiful actually, it's very, very plushy and really cozy. If you get your fabric and you're not sure which is the right side and the wrong side, you can do a little curl test. So if you see here on this piece, this is the straight grain, this is the stretchy width grain, because all fleeces will have a little bit more give in one direction than the other. And if you curl it, you stretch it a little and curl it, you'll find that the curled side goes to the wrong side and it will round out over on the right side. So it's easy to see on the Sherpa one, which is why I'm showing you. But if you do it on a feltier fleece, you know, flat, smoother fleece, you'll find which is the right side and the wrong side if you're finding it tricky to know which is which. One of the best ways to find out about fleece is to head over to the Minerva website and search #fleece, and lots of fleece projects will come up. So our Minerva makers will be sharing what they have been making with fleece, and I've picked out a few here just to show a range of those fleeces that we've just talked about. Let's start with the natural cotton fleeces. So it comes in two weights: a thicker weight you can use for coats, or a lighter weight you can use for more fitted garments. You can also use a lighter cotton fabric underneath collars to make them a little bit lighter. This jacket has added pockets. Fleece is great for kids wear, for coats. Look at these cuties in their little zip ups, aren't they fabulous? And also great for children's durable hoodies. You can make whole jackets out of polar fleece. This one's got pockets and buttons down the front. You can look out for the textured ones. This is the Sherpa fleece that I'm sewing with today, or you could use it to line a jacket or to add a fur effect collar. Fleece is great for children's wear, so for onesies, coats, toy making, fun bean bags, blankets. And you will also find printed versions of fleece. They do come in and out of stock. They're great for sportswear, onesies, or just for really cosy layering tops and sweatshirts. If you're thinking about sewing with fleece, then do look out for Vicky's video, which will run alongside this, where she'll be doing a pattern pairing for fleece fabrics. Today I'm pairing my fleece with one of the most obvious things that you can make with fleece, which is a sweatshirt. So you can use any pattern here. You can use the Jarrah sweatshirt, the toaster sweatshirt, the Billy sweatshirt, a Big Four pattern sweatshirt. All of those will work with fleece. You might need to just think about what you're going to have around the neck, what you're going to have around your wrist, how stretchy your fleece is. All those things will contribute to the pattern that you choose for the fabric that you have. I'm working with the Sherpa fleece today because I'm hoping to make a sweatshirt for quite a specific purpose. We have a camper van and we go camping in our van, and sometimes I need to sleep in an item to keep me warm on a cold night, or I might need to wear it early in the morning, and I go to festivals, so this would be ideal because I can wear it in the mornings, I can wear it if it's cold, and I can also wear it to sleep in. Cutting fleece is really easy because it doesn't fray, but it is thick, so you might consider cutting in a single layer. You're going to be maybe forcing the blades open of your fine dressmaking scissors, so you might want to just use some household scissors if it's cutting through the fleece really well. You can use a rotary cutter too, and you also need to maybe think about the nap of the fabric. When cutting fleece, as mentioned, you'll need to be making sure that you get the nap going in the right direction, or at least in the same direction if you want it to go the other way. So in this case I've got a Sherpa, and because I want it to be quite sort of fuzzy and textured, I've got my nap going in the opposite direction. You can cut with a rotary cutter in single layers. I cut mine with just household scissors because I didn't want to force that thickness through my dressmaking scissors. I pinned the pattern on and I used really long pins. I keep my long pins in a separate tin. Just means that I can pin through the paper and the fleece and it doesn't get lost and buried in the fabric. Long pins are great when you're making your garment because you can see them if you've got something with a plushy pile. Okay, I'm all cut out, so it's time to head over to the machine, check out the setup and make sure we've got the right needle in. When you're sewing with fleece, there are a few things that you can do to make life a little bit easier. So you can make your stitch length a little bit longer. You normally do this when you're going through thicker fabrics because it means that the seam can peel open without putting the stitches under stress. I've got a needle in. Mine is an 80 needle because this is quite a thick amount, and I haven't changed it. I've just used it from my last few projects because I know that sewing through fleece will dull my needle. If you can change your foot pressure, that's a good idea. You can loosen that off. It doesn't squeeze it down quite so much and it doesn't create so much creeping. I've got my normal foot in, so I'm just going to see what happens. I'm getting a good seam there with no skip stitches. If you've got a particularly stretchy fleece, you might want to switch out for a ballpoint needle, and you'll know you need to do that if you're getting lots of skip stitches. I'm not seeing anything from the right side. And here's a good example, if you can see under the machine light, the right side and the wrong side. So this is the right side, it's a little bit more fuzzy, and this is the wrong side and it's smoother. But of course, you could switch that out and use it either way as long as you're consistent. If you are getting some creeping, and that is where one seam gets dragged through the machine faster than the other, and then your seams will be uneven at the end, you can use a walking foot. If you want your garment to be particularly stretchy around the neck for getting your item on and off, then you can use a Maraflex thread. You can use that throughout. It will just give your seams a little bit more stretch, and you can sew on a straight stitch with a Maraflex thread and you'll get a stretchy seam. There's a couple of things to look out for. So one of them is that you're not stretching the fabric as you put it through the machine. If your seams are becoming banana shaped, or if you're getting waving, that's because you're stretching your fabric too much, and it can be a little bit tempting with fleece because maybe it's quite thick and you've used up all the space between here, and if you put your hand at the back and start pulling your fabric through, you will be stretching it and your seams won't be straight. If you want to unpick fleece because you've made an error, you can use your unpicker to go in between the seam, and you can definitely seam rip with fleece. It doesn't damage the fabric, and now you can resew. Another issue you might get with fleece is shifting, and that's where you think you've put the raw edges together and you start sewing, but because the fabric is very thick and opaque, the piece on the back starts to shift away from the seam. So here it'll look like you've got a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, but on the back you'll only just be catching the fabric as it shifts away. A way to deal with this is to very, very subtly have your bottom layer showing. I can just see the bottom layer. If I'm just concentrating on the top layer that I'm sewing, that can shift away, and I'll show you what might happen. You remove your work, you've sewn a beautiful straight line. On the back you've got some shifting, and that's not very much, and that probably won't make any difference. But if that starts to shift and you miss it, you'll have a hole, you'll have the wrong seam allowance. But here, because I could just see the underside, then I know that I've pretty much got my 1.5 seam allowance. So do look out for shifting with thicker fabrics, especially ones that are fuzzy or have a nap. You won't need to finish the seams of your fleece because it's not going to fray, but you might choose some different options for either sewing up your fleece garment or for finishing the edges if you're making something simple. If you're making something like a blanket, you might actually just use that raw edge and maybe snip into it with some fringing. For finishing seams on a smooth fleece, you wouldn't really want to do this on anything that's got a pile. You can top stitch down your seam allowances, creating a sort of flat fell seam or a top stitch detail on the right side. This is useful if you're making something for sportswear or something that you're going to be moving around in and you don't want the seam allowance to be rubbing your skin. From the right side you get this top stitching detail. It's a good way to keep everything really nice and flat. Otherwise, you can just finger press your seams down You don't want to be putting an iron on any of this synthetic fleece. It will melt really, really quickly. But if you do just want to press your seams out, you can put a press cloth on top and turn the heat down on your iron. On thick fleeces, especially the thick core range fleece, you can leave that as a raw edge. Just need to make sure that it's cut nice and accurately. It's a little bit trickier on the fleecy textured ones because where you've cut it, you'll start to get some shedding. So you'll definitely need to be finishing that in a different way. By overlocking and turning up, by hand stitching, binding, all different ways that you can finish the edge of your fabric. For the cuffs, I have turned those back. I've got a nice deep cuff. This is the inside, and I'm not just going to top stitch that. I am going to zigzag it because I'm getting some shedding. So I want to stop all of that from coming out at the end of my sleeves and getting stuck to the rest of my clothes. You can, of course, overlock along there and then turn it up once and top stitch or hand stitch. I don't mind a top stitching line on here, but if you've got something with quite a deep pile, you might want to just test the look of a top stitch before you decide if that's what you'd like. Zigzag edge just means that I've still got a little bit of stretch in my fabric, and it's finished off the inside and it's buried in the pile on the outside. For blanket edges or the edge of blanket coats or casual throw over autumn jackets, you can use a fringing technique. Because the fabric doesn't fray, you can just cut into it. So that might be something you might want to think about. If you're making sportswear in a lighter fleece, then you might want to make your item on an overlocker and use a flat locking seam. So that's where you'll see like a ladder stitch on the right side and it becomes a feature. You can find out about that in one of our overlocking videos. It will show you the machine and needle setup for sewing fleece on an overlocker. It's not specific to fleece, but you will see how to set up that overlock for flat locking, and you can test it out on some test pieces before you decide which technique to use. The long pins that you used for cutting will also be useful when you're starting to put your seams together. They're a little bit bigger. They're particularly good if you are making children's wear and baby wear and you don't want to have any pins left or buried in the fleece, especially if you're using something plushy. Or now might be the time to use clips if you're used to using those. I don't use clips all the time. I use them when the fabric is firm enough to hold the weight of the clips without it all flopping around under my machine. I'm okay with pins at the moment, but I'm probably going to switch out to clips when I get to adding the arms. Now that I'm adding my shoulder seam to the sleeve head, I'm going to switch out to clips just to deal with the bulk. Very quickly you will start to add bulk to your seam, so I'm going to show you some bits of my sweatshirt. It's not a sew along today, I'm just going to dip in and out, but I'll show you what happens when I get to the bulky seams, especially under the arm. Some fleeces, it's better to leave your seam allowances wide so that they have some weight to lie flat, because if I trim those out, that will actually encourage them to stand up and be more bulky. So I'm going to keep those seam allowances. They're quite wide. I've kept them big on this sweatshirt. It's quite an oversized sweatshirt, and that means that they lie open, and from the right side it stays nice and flat. If you've got a fleece like this one with a bit of a texture, you can use a darning needle or a knitting needle to just pull the texture away from the seam, because sometimes those fibres just get crimped down into the seam and it looks a little bit unnatural, so you can just fluff those up. I'm sewing from this side because I want to see the seam allowances. I don't want to create bulk by having one of these seam allowances folded the wrong way, so I definitely want to make sure that both of those are lying flat. That's one way to reduce bulk, and you can also trim out any spare fabric. On this shoulder seam, because it's a drop shoulder, I want just one seam trimmed out because that one has the tighter curve on it, so I don't want that to pull up the fabric. So I've trimmed that one out. I've left the lower one because that's just helping the seam to stay open. A final technique you can use if you've got a polar fleece, one that doesn't fray on the edge, is you can make an overlap seam. So this is on a boiled wool coat, but I just knew I'd got an example of it. If you've got a drop shoulder and you don't want all of this bulk inside making a lump at your upper arm, then you can run tacking stitches along each seam line, match up the tacking stitches and have your seams overlapping. It spreads the weight of the seam allowance. Now that I'm adding the collar to my sweatshirt, I'm getting a lot of layers here now. I've got the 2 layers from my collar join and the shoulder seam, so I'm going to use my hump jumper. A little tip if you've got a lot of layers like that is not to start there. So I'm going to go round the back of my sweatshirt. I'm going to start here so that I get a clean run over here. If this is where you start and finish, everything will start to get a little bit out of position. As the tip of my machine foot starts to come up in the air and the back sinks down, that's when I'm going to put the hump jumper behind the foot. So it's happening now. Needle down, foot up. I'm going to put this behind, and what it does is it keeps the foot parallel so that I don't get any skip stitches. I can only go a few stitches at a time now. When you run out of the seam aid, push it through a little bit more. And then when you get past the thick part, you can take the seam aid out and carry on sewing. You probably won't be interfacing fleece in a way that you interface maybe, you know, neck sections or hems or button bands and things like that. But on necklines, you'll need to stay stitch. So that fleece was stay stitched before I added the hood on, especially because I was adding a little bit of weight there, so I didn't want the neck to stretch out. I do want it to be stretchy to go over my neck, but I don't want it to go all wavy. You can put in a piece of clear elastic tape, so you can put that in the seam allowance and that will stop it stretching. Also, if you've got a shoulder seam on your sweatshirt and quite a heavy sleeve, you can add that too, but usually fleece is quite light. You can combine your fleece with different ribbing, so you can use ribbing fabrics here, ready-made cuffs, or you can add patterned ones. You can use those on the hemband. You can fold them in half and use them around a neckline. They're quite a useful way of getting a neat finish to something which is otherwise quite a simple make. You can switch it up with your cuffs and neckband. The last thing to do when you've finished your garment is to have a really good clear down. I had it in my hair, had it on the table, it's everywhere, but what that is telling me is that I need to clean out my machine, so I'm going to brush out my sewing machine and my overlocker and myself. I'm also going to remove this needle I don't know what I'm going to be sewing next, but I definitely know I've sewn a fur jacket and a fleece jumper and a couple of other things with that universal needle, so I'm going to get rid of that. And my next needle will be suitable for the fabric type, or new if I need an 80 needle. This is the Soho 7 toaster. It's got the thick collar on. I've done a split hem. I haven't put a cuff on because I've got the Sherpa fleece, so it's nice and thick. But you can use any sweatshirt pattern when you're working with fleece. If you would like to explore more fabric types, then take a look at the Minerva fabric guide. There's a couple of videos that support this, so you can have a more in-depth look and a chat about it. There's one with Vicky and there's one with me, and we both take you through what's inside the guide. It gives you lots of information about how fibres are made, knit fibres, stretch fibres, gives you information about stretch on fabric, how to cut fabric. Really great information here about its weight versus its thickness, and that will definitely help you to understand the hand of the fabric when you see it online, and some considerations for if you're buying fabric online. The next section of the book is an index of all different fibre types. So if you understand what fibre your fabric is made out of, then you'll understand more about the characteristics of it and whether it will suit a particular project or not. The last section is the section where you'll have 70 little swatches to put into your book, like a little sticker book. The QR code is really handy because if you scan the QR code, then boiled wool will be filtered to your page. So if you think, oh, I really fancy making something with this, and I think I can do all of these things, or it's something I want to explore, it will filter it down so that there's only boiled wool in your search. I love the inspirational photography. It just gives you some ideas of what you can do with the fabric, and you could also go and check out that maker and see what other things they have made. So that is the Minerva fabric guide. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed today's video and it's given you a little insight into fleece, especially if you've been looking for a natural fibre fleece. That's something to look out for on our website. We would love to see anything you've been making, so do make a free account with us, share your makes there, add a couple of photos and a description. It really does inspire our Minerva makers and us too. We are on F of our Fabric Masterclass. We're in alphabetical order, so lots more inspiration to come. Do subscribe here at our Minerva YouTube channel, or you can head over to our website and watch the videos through the link there. Thank you very much for watching. Do call for our next episode.